recap, for those that cannot quite remember, this part will be useful for you. Last week, we covered the ovarian cycle. We learned that there's a cyclic process that takes place in the ovaries. Inside the ovaries of females, every month, structures called follicles are developed. And these follicles, inside them, comes an egg, or what the scientific term is the ovum. Right? Every month, these things will develop. Follicles with an egg inside. What regulates the development of these follicles and eggs are hormones at the end of the day. Okay? And this is what these graphs are trying to show you. The top two graphs show you two graphs of two hormones. This graph over here shows you also two graphs with two hormones. Right? So this is how the recap will go. First and foremost, we learned that there are four hormones involved. The first two hormones that are very important to you are the top two graphs, FSH and LH. We learned that in the first few days of the menstrual cycle, FSH and LH will be produced at very low levels. It sounds like an EG one. Okay. So, first few days of the menstrual cycle, FSH and LH will be produced in very small amounts. What is the impact of this? Okay, so a quick recap for yourself. So what happens when LH and FSH are produced in small amounts? Okay, I hear some of you mouthing the words, follicles begin to develop. Okay, so the combination of these two things together results in several follicles developing, each with its own egg inside. Okay? Moving on, when these follicles develop, they end up producing a new hormone. And that's why we see a new set of graphs developing. If you look at the graphs below, at this stage, you will start to see a gradual rise in a hormone called estrogen. This hormone is produced by the growing follicles. Is it following? We also learned that from last week that estrogen in low amounts inhibits the secretion of FSH and LH. So in your graphs, you should have drawn something like that goes upwards, and then you put a minus. Okay. Low levels of estrogen will negatively inhibit the secretion of LH and FSH. Okay. At a certain point, estrogen levels will rise to a significant amount. There's something falling up my neck. It's an ant. Okay? The estrogen levels will rise to a point where the reverse happens. Rather than negatively inhibit, it will positively stimulate the secretion of FSH and LH. And this is what you see. You see that the levels start to rise sharply. Okay. When these two levels are really high, it results in one of the follicles that has matured form a Graafian follicle to ovulate. So there will be a pop. We call this process ovulation. Okay. After ovulation, you will start to see the estrogen levels fall. Why do they fall? Well, because not all of the follicles will make it to adulthood. Many of them will die along the way. They'll not die, they will not develop fully into the Korean follicle. So those that disappear will result in a dip in estrogen levels. Less follicles produce estrogen. Okay, then comes the last part of the ovarian cycle. The moment this scar tissue is formed, called the corpus luteum, a new hormone is formed, and that hormone is called progesterone. Okay, at the start it was very low, then past that stage you see a rise. Okay, this rise is because this structure is producing progesterone. Okay, and you see a rise in estrogen levels too. Okay. Last but not least, a combined effect of progesterone and estrogen has a negative inhibition on the production of these two hormones. And that's why you see after that sharp rise, you go down to low levels again. Eventually, the corpus luteum will also break down. This negative inhibition will be lifted, and the whole cycle will repeat itself again. That's the ovarian cycle. If that was a complicated cycle, I've made a flow chart for all of you. If you go to your Google Classroom and you click under ovarian and menstrual cycle flow charts, I split up whatever I said in words into 3 flow charts. Okay? The early stages, at ovulation, last but not least after ovulation. You'll see a lot of symbols I use, like plus and minus. All these plus and minus just trying to show you the positive stimulation or the negative inhibition. I have trouble, I have to admit, remembering all this. So I made a flow chart for myself to learn. And I just want to share with you. Some of you may prefer words, then so be it, right? You can go and read the wordy form. But if you prefer flow charts, then this will be for you. But bottom line is, I don't want you to stress too much about the words. Instead, I'll be able to answer a few questions. Number 1, what produces the hormone? Number 2, what is the impact of the hormone? If you can answer these 2 questions, then I will say you're good to go. Okay? I will not ask you to draw the graphs out. Very often the graphs will be given to you again. And so what is your job? Your job is to be able to interpret the graph. So imagine a structured question. Okay, imagine a structured question. Today we're just going to complete whatever you are going to learn by embedding one more layer, the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle, fortunately, is much easier to understand if you could follow the ovarian cycle. Okay? For the menstrual cycle, you don't need you to focus on the top 2 graphs anymore. Just focus on the bottom 2 will do. If you like to, you can pull out your SLS, then we can have a look through at the menstrual cycle. You can also have your textbook by your side if you want to interpret what the textbook is trying to say at the various points. Let's have a look at this graph over here. Okay, I want you to see that this is not that hard, the menstrual cycle. Okay, the menstrual cycle is broken down into 3 phases: menstrual flow phase, proliferative proliferative phase and secretory phase. Not pronounced today. So if you want to split it up, you can split it up this way. You can highlight the various sections into boxes, so you can broadly see what are the three things that are happening in the uterus. You may be wondering, what is this being shown over here? This structure being shown here, you can write it down, is the uterine lining. That structure that's being drawn. What is the uterine lining? It is a lining that's rich in blood vessels. That's where, if fertilization occurs, the fertilized zygote will implant itself there and start developing. That's where the eventual baby will get all its nutrients from also. Okay, so let's break it down. Okay, very broadly, the menstrual cycle can be broken down into just simply three phases. Well, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay, I can.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gone through us. One class drop it twice from like this level, and it's still okay. Thank you. Okay, I want you to broadly see this up. That it can be broken down in three phases. So there is the menstrual flow, followed by the proliferative. Problem pronouncing this, proliferative. Last but not least, the secretory. Okay, the best way to interpret this is as such. The only question I can possibly ask you is, what is triggering menstrual flow? Okay, if you look at the diagram below, you see a downward slope of the structure. The downward slope is trying to show you that the uterine lining is breaking down. Okay? As it breaks down, it will leave the female body, and that is when menstruation begins. So actually the ovarian menstrual cycle, day 0 is marked by when the uterine lining is exiting the female body. So a question I could ask you is, what is triggering menstrual flow? Why is the uterine lining breaking down? Okay, so it's breaking down because the estrogen and progesterone levels are low. So if you look at this region over here, when there is low amounts of estrogen and progesterone, menstruation occurs. Just two more things. That's why it's called menstrual flow. This is when the uterine lining will flow out of the female body. Next phase called the proliferative phase. That means it is growing. That's what proliferative means. And you see that there's an upward slope. The uterine lining is thickening. So what triggers the thickening of the uterine lining? When there is when there is high amounts of estrogen. Okay, when there is high amounts of estrogen, the uterine lining will begin to thicken. Yes. Progesterone is not so critical at this stage for uterine lining to grow and thicken. The last phase, you need the uterine lining to stay thick for a period of time, so that if fertilization occurs, the baby can plant itself in this region. So how can we maintain this thick layer? Well, we need two hormones. So the last part goes like that. when there is high amounts of estrogen and progesterone, then you'll find that the uterine lining will maintain its thickness. Okay, the menstrual cycle, that's all there is to it. You just need to know at each phase what is the level of each hormone required. At the menstrual flow phase, both hormone levels are very low. In the proliferative phase, estrogen levels are very high. Secretory phase, both hormones are high. That's all that's required of you. How does this relate to our lives? Well, technically, therefore, a female could artificially modify her own menstrual cycle. If, for example, they do not wish to have menstrual flow during that, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Clinics do sell pills of hormones. So you could buy artificial estrogen or progesterone to consume. Why would females do this? Well, so that they can regulate whether fertilized egg will implant itself on the uterine lining or not. If there's no uterine lining, then even if fertilization occurs, babies cannot develop. So that's why a lady may want to consume estrogen or progesterone to regulate the development of this uterine lining. What these two hormones get digested? It doesn't. So it can be consumed into the body, and then it will be absorbed into the bloodstream, and it can directly target the uterine lining, either so that it doesn't thicken. That's a good question. Why does it get digested? I'm not too sure. I suspect that the pill that is being taken likely has some sort of protective coat to prevent it, so that it can last long enough, so that it doesn't get digested but gets absorbed once it reaches a certain part of the small intestines. I'm not too sure, but that's my understanding of how some pills work. They may have some protective coat so that it can last a bit longer to reach the part of the small intestine you want. Okay? Okay, so we've come to the end of the ovarian and menstrual cycle. These are the key questions you can expect, and also you can use to test yourself to see if you understand the cycle well. If you go to your G classroom, and if you go to this set of notes, for one, you can use these flow charts to help you remember both cycles. Personally, this is how I remember without the use of words. Secondly, you can try and test yourself to see if you understand the various parts of the cycle by asking yourself these questions. These questions revolve around number 1 and number 2. If you are able to do that, then I would say you are quite prepared for any question that may come your way for these 2 cycles. For now, I invite all of you in your pairs or in your triplets to try these questions. This in one note, then perhaps you can write down the answers also. At least what you think is the answer. Then we have a quick discussion later on. this, we'll play a kaput of this, then you can fight it out. Prizes to be won. We'll go through the answers through Kahoot. In whatever teams you have worked in, one person from your group can join the Kahoot. If you win, I'll give you a prize. Just one person from your pair or your how many people you're working with, join in. It'll be the same questions that you've just done. So you might want to discuss before joining. There are 3 prizes up for grabs. What's your team name? Okay, who is trying to get in? Has not gotten it. Okay, team behind.
Our staff player went toilet.
Huh? Too bad. Yeah, let me drop later. Wow, a lot of people are. again. Alright, let's start. Okay, I'm going to start up. Okay, 12 teams. Ready? Your team lost already, it's too late. Okay, good up. Okay, so that's first one. Yeah, focus on here. Okay. Sounds like a awkward spell, huh? Very close. Okay, for those that managed to get this one up, that's because you remember that after the corpus luteum forms, it also produces estrogen. Yeah? Okay, next question. Wow, who's corpus luteum? Oh, okay, good job. True, false. Because they only show one follicle developing. It's very misleading. Okay, so just be very sure. Note it down somewhere in case you're not aware.
Oh my god, it's discussion time.
Okay, so is this true? Yes. When estrogen levels are low, it inhibits both of its secretion. But when it's high, it stimulates the secretion. That's like a flip. Okay? Oh! Wow, Daniel. Your return from the toilet. Okay, this one I did not teach you, so it's out of the textbook as well. You need to think. Okay, this is not in your textbook, alright? It is think out of the box. Okay? So why is there a drop? because all these follicles, some of them will die. Only that one that developed in the created follicle will stay on. Those that die off no longer produce estrogen. Okay? So this cannot be found in your textbook. Okay, a few more questions. Just 3 more.
No, you went too slow.
Last 2 questions. Is it laptop or something? Okay, last question. There are 2 answers. Yeah, there are 2 answers. Okay, okay, so look on the whiteboard. At the start, when estrogen progesterone levels are low, it can inhibit. Okay, sorry, when estrogen levels are low, it can inhibit. When you combine both together, it can inhibit also. Okay? Okay, so how best to learn this? Personally, I like the flow charts, but you do your own style. Okay? Alright, so here are the winners. In 3rd place, we have. Okay, who's anything? Oh, who's anything? Oh, okay, congrats. Okay, so you all can share this with each other. Okay, who's the smiley? Yourself? Okay, enjoy the Oreo. Okay, last but not least. Alright, congrats, 1 each. Okay, well done. Okay, we just have a little bit more. Okay, I prepared quite a lot of Kahoot for the months ahead, so we can play a bit more next time. Okay, so let's go back to SRS. We're almost done with this chapter. Okay, now let's go to fertilization. Okay, that's the last part of today's lesson, fertilization. Okay, we learned in sexual reproduction, we require a male and a female gamete. Okay, gamete refers to the sex cells to fertilize each other so that you can get a zygote. This process is slightly different in plants and in animals, in humans. Broadly speaking, in plants and in humans, you will require a male and a female gamete to get a zygote. But this in-between section of how this is achieved is slightly different, is quite different in plants and in humans. That's what we're about to look at right now. We're going to watch 2 videos. One showing you how fertilization occurs in plants, another in humans. I'd like you to spot as many differences as possible. Okay? So as we watch the video, I'd like you to jot down as many differences as possible. Okay, hold on. I don't know if this is urgent, so I'm going to pick up phone for a teacher calling. No, yes. Do I have the keys? Yes, I do. Where are you? Oh. I'm in class 403. You want to come by? JH403 +403. Oh, okay, I'm +403. I'm teaching now. Alright. Okay, so let's have a watch. First and foremost, we're going to watch the plant version. Hey, no, let's watch the human version. I think you're more familiar with that. Okay? You watch the human version first, so that you try it yourself. Then we'll watch the plant version, because that's quite different. Okay, brace yourselves. The sperms have a very bad time getting to the egg. Okay, you'll see how many obstacles the sperm has to face.
Fertilisation is the epic story of a single sperm facing incredible odds to unite with an egg and form a molecule life. It is the story of all of us. During sexual intercourse, about 300 million sperm enter the vagina. Soon afterward, millions of them will either flow out of the vagina or die in its acidic environment. However, many survive because of the protective elements provided in the fluid surrounding them. Next, the sperm must pass through the cervix and opening into the uterus. Usually, it remains tightly closed, but here the cervix is open for a few days while the woman ovulates. The sperm swim through the cervical mucus, which is thinned to a more watery consistency for easier passage. Once inside the cervix, the sperm continues swimming toward the uterus, though millions will die trying to make it through the mucus. Some sperm remain behind, caught in the folds of the cervix, but they may later continue the journey as a backup to the first group. Inside the uterus, muscular uterine contractions assist the sperm on their journey toward the egg. However, resident cells from the woman's immune system, mistaking the sperm for foreign invaders, destroy thousands more. Next, half the sperm head for the empty fallopian tube, while the other half swim toward the tube containing the unfertilized egg. Now, only a few thousand remain. Inside the fallopian tube, a tiny cilia push the egg toward the uterus. To continue, the sperm must surge against this motion to reach the egg. Some sperm get trapped in the cilia and die. During this part of the journey, chemicals in the reproductive tract cause the membranes covering the heads of the sperm to change. As a result, the sperm become hyperactive, swimming harder and faster towards their destination. At long last, the sperm reach the egg. Only a few dozen of the original 300 million sperm remain. The egg is covered with a layer of cells called the corona radiata. The sperm must push through this layer to reach the outer layer of the egg, the zona pellucida. When sperm reach the zona pellucida, they attach to specialized sperm receptors on the surface, which triggers their acrosomes to release digestive enzymes, enabling the sperm to burrow into the layer. Inside the zona pellucida is a narrow, fluid-filled space just outside the egg cell membrane. The first sperm to make contact will fertilize the egg. After a perilous journey and against incredible odds, a single sperm attaches to the egg cell membrane. Within a few minutes, their outer membranes fuse and the egg pulls the sperm inside. This event causes changes in the egg membrane that prevent other sperm from attaching to it. Next, the egg releases chemicals that push other sperm away from the egg and create an impenetrable fertilization membrane. As the reaction spreads outward, the zona pellucida hardens, trapping any sperm unlucky enough to be caught inside. Outside the egg, sperm are no longer able to attach to the zona pellucida. Meanwhile, inside the egg, the tightly packed male genetic material spreads out. A new membrane inside, the genetic material reforms into 23 chromosomes. The female genetic material, awakened by the fusion of the sperm with the egg, finishes dividing, resulting in the female pronucleus, which also contains 23 chromosomes. As the male and female pronuclei form, spiderweb-like threads called microtubules hold them toward each other. The two sets of chromosomes join together, completing the process of fertilization. At this moment, a unique genetic code arises, instantly determining gender, hair color, eye color, and hundreds of other characteristics. This new single cell, the zygote, is the beginning of a new human being. And now the cilia in the fallopian tube gently sweep the zygote toward the uterus, where he or she will implant and enrich a uterine lining, growing and maturing for the next 9 months until ready for birth.
Right, humans. As you can see, every time I feel like I fit in, right? I remember that I'm the winner of 300 million sperms. Yeah. Okay, so if you work carefully, 300 million to a few dozen. That means 12 times a few more. Right? 300 million to a few dozen. Along the way, lots of things happen to all the sperms. Really, it's the fittest sperm that makes it to the egg. Number one, they said that the cervix serves as one barrier. If the cervix is closed, that means it cannot even go out the uterus to the fallopian tubes. Number two, there's a lot of mucus lining the entire pathway, and sperms can get trapped along the way. Number three, it's also highly folded along the way, and so sperms can also get trapped in the folds. Okay, actually, I do not expect you to know all these barriers, just FYI, okay, so they can appreciate that a lot of sperms do not make it. Number four, the female's immune system will also kill off a lot of sperm. Number five, this one is the most sad one. You made it so far, right? Then you go the wrong fallopian tube, right? Because every month, by right, only one egg will ovulate, and that means only one fallopian tube will have egg traveling down the way. So if you are the unlucky sperm, that whole bunch that goes the wrong door, then you also will fail. This one I find the most wasted. Last but not least, the fallopian tube comes with a lot of cilia that helps to sweep the egg towards the uterus. So that means the sperm also has to go against the cilia. Lots of barriers that end up resulting only a few dozen making it to the egg. At the end, this is where the sperm starts making use of its adaptations. I expect you to know that the sperm structure, and I think in lower JH you learn some of the structures. Yeah? For example, you learn that the sperm comes with a tail. Yeah? I think you all learned this before in lower JH. Okay? Is it called tail? No, it's called flagella. Right? That flappy thing. Right? That allows the sperm to move forward. There is also a middle region that comes with a lot of mitochondria. What do you suppose all these mitochondria is for?
So it can move.
Yeah, giving energy in the form of ATP so that it can flap its way towards the egg. Last but not least, a very important adaptation. Sperms at the very tip, they always look very sharp at the tip, right? Okay, it's not because the sperms are sharp there so they can drill their way in. Okay? It's not there, huh? Okay, but that's what I used to think, like they spin and then they drill their way into the egg. It doesn't work that way. At the tip over here is what we call an acrosome. Not sure if you learned this in lower GH. But it have okay, but in the acrosome comes with enzymes, hydrolytic enzymes. These enzymes help to break down the barrier that surrounds the egg. Yes. Sorry? This what? What is? Sorry, raise up. They have a neck. Is that where the mitochondria stop? No? Okay, let me see the neck. What's one got neck? Oh, okay, oh what? Already you got spoon of neck. Okay, not important, huh? Okay, if you look in the textbook, the sperm looks like that, and then got one neck over here. Okay, then there's the middle region. Okay, I don't need you to know this detail, right? Okay? So what is fertilization? Fertilization is when the nucleus of the sperm fuses with the nucleus of the egg. That is what fertilization really is. You need the fusion of both nucleus. Right now, each one has haploid number, but once it fuses, then you get a diploid number. So imagine now both fuse already. Right? Then we'll restore the 46. So you may be wondering, it was stopping many other sperms from fertilizing it. All of them throw their nucleus inside. Well, that's because the winner that first able to penetrate through all the layers will create a chemical change around the egg to make the surrounding parts of the egg impenetrable to new sperm. Right? That's how we regulate, and only one sperm can make it through. Yes? Okay, what if two sperm going at the exact same time? Don't know that. I honestly don't know if that actually happens. Sorry? Okay, then twins. How do twins arise? Okay, so twins arise when, okay, post-fertilization. So after the sperm fertilizes the egg, nucleus fuse ready. Then from here, this zygote could split into two. Okay, it could split into two zygotes. Then each one of these zygotes could develop into an identical baby after that. Right, so that is how twins are formed. But you know that there are two kinds of twins. Identical, non-identical. Okay, so how do non-identical twins form? Okay, so some females may produce two eggs at one go. So both fallopian tube, one egg going down both sides. Well, those sperms are very lucky. Either way also will hit jackpot. Okay, then go up either way, then you could have two babies, they are not genetically identical, are developing. Okay, that's in humans. Yeah? Now, let's look at plants. Okay, plants are quite different. Huh? How much time we have left? Okay, maybe not. In the next lesson, we'll look at plants. Okay? Okay, so that's all I have for today. Next lesson we'll look at fertilization in plants. For today, you can spend the remaining time touching up your notes. Anything new you learned?